Ireland, the land of saints and scholars? Or should we now refer to it as the land of horrific stabbings? Right, let's get into it. Another stabbing, horrific stabbing yesterday in Grattan Wood in Donamead. It's a suburb of North Dublin. Involving, as they put it, children, boys, teenagers, in an apartment, in an ordinary apartment complex surrounded by ordinary people, children, women, adults of all descriptions, just living their lives. And in the midst of all this was an apartment which was run or owned or overseen by TUSLA. Now, that's the government state agency for taking care of children, minors, who are, for some reason or other, brought into state care. Now, look, this is. I'm going to go through it now in a second. This is horrific, of course. You've probably heard. I'm sure you've heard the details of this. It's been all over the media, all over the news. You can't bury stuff like this. That's so horrific. But as I said in the introduction, we used to be the land of saints and scholars. I grew up with this. I grew up with this kind of notion and this kind of idea and this vision of what Ireland was and who we were. And that's all. It's all been blown away in the last few years. We are now in a totally different paradigm. It's hard to fathom. It's hard to get your head around. And it's not because we Irish have suddenly changed, become something else, turned into a totally different type of persons, tribe, whatever you want to call it. No, we haven't. What has happened is, as you know and I know, and the authorities know and they won't admit it, is that we have essentially invited in the whole world people from places that are really different to us. Totally different cultures, different norms, different ideas about what is right and wrong. The Swedes did this too before we did, and they are the poster child of this experiment, and their experiment has gone horribly wrong too. The Swedes themselves didn't change. They haven't changed at all. But now Sweden has all kinds of crazy bombing attacks, hand grenade attacks, huge numbers of sexual assaults. It's just a basket case, really. As I said, that's not down to the Swedes. That's down to what the Swedes did. And Ireland the same. We Irish haven't changed at all. We're still the same Irish. We just wear, different clothes, fashions, and different haircuts and whatever. Okay, not me. I've kind of stayed the same. But you know what I mean. You get the point. We had a stabbing incident yesterday in this apartment block, which looked like any apartment block, where a Somali boy stabbed a Ukrainian boy in the most unbelievably vicious, brutal, savage manner you could possibly imagine. I could describe it to you, but I'd probably get a strike for it. It's so vicious. I'm talking brutal, evil, savage. And there were two females in the apartment at the time as well, and they were lucky to escape with their lives. I believe, having seen the reports and read the reports, and it did wait a few hours to put this video together. The whole incident was only stopped when unarmed Gardaí, very, very bravely, extremely bravely, and I commend those Gardaí, overpowered this Somali youth, as they put it, boy of 17, as they put it, who went absolutely berserk with a knife and essentially murdered, killed this young Ukrainian lad. All of them in state care in this apartment. And where do you go with that? Well, I think there is the obvious thing that these events should not be happening. They shouldn't be happening because these people shouldn't be here. We all know this. There's nothing new there, and you've heard me say this a million times. There are parts of the world that are just dysfunctional, that are just dangerous, that have societal norms that would make us wince in absolute fear and horror at what they do and how they operate. And I know this myself personally because I've been lucky to travel over the course of my life to various places, even far-flung places. I've been in Africa quite a number of times in various parts. And I know from my travels and from you imbibe the culture there when you're there, talk to people and all of that. I was in Kenya quite a number of times, which has a lot of Somali interactions because they're a neighbouring country. And I know that Somalia is a really, really dysfunctional place, a dysfunctional society, a failed state. And even many Kenyan people said to me when I was in Kenya, look, you got to watch out for those Somalians. They really, as they put it, and they did put it to me this way, they'll cut you. There you go. They'll cut you. And not just the men. This was told to me by Kenyans when I was in Kenya. And they have obviously they have a big influx of Somalis to their country because they just come across the border trying to, get better things going. And the Kenyans, they really don't have a lot of time for it. Now, anyway, there are certain countries that are extremely violent. There are certain countries that are extremely misogynistic in the most brutal way. And this is just a fact of life today. It's a fact of life. Afghanistan, very, very dysfunctional place. Very bad place if you're a woman or a girl. There are elements of this Indian subcontinent, for example, if Pakistan, Bangladesh, again, a lot of very, very dysfunctional societal norms there that do not in any way chime with our once safe societies here in Ireland and the UK. So what happened yesterday basically was you had this little microcosm, little apartment run by the state agency, the children's agency, TUSLA, where you had 4 people, I assume, supposedly under 24-hour care or watch, and an incident took place where this Somali youth, under 18, as they say, brutally, viciously and heinously, evilly attacked and murdered this young Ukrainian lad, and would have done more, possibly, quite probably, only for the intervention of the Gardaí who overpowered him. Now, the other question many people have, and it's a very, very pertinent question, is, well, do we know, are we sure that these individuals and this murderer was a child? Was he really? Because there's been many, many cases now, and you'll see them popping up again and again, where essentially adults come in and present as children, and the state just takes them at their word. Here's a couple of examples here where, in your view, do you think these are children? Are they? Are they really? Would you buy that? Well, anyway, I'll tell you who does buy it. The state buys it. The state just says, yeah, you're under 18. What are you, 15? Yeah, okay. Guy could be 28. 35 you would. The state doesn't check, doesn't vet them. And so you end up with situations like this here. These are, according to the state, these are 2 children there. They're 2 children similar age in the same school. One of them, as you can see, has pulled out a sharp either a knife or screwdriver or something. That's how they react. In certain parts of the world, that's quite normal. Get into an argument with somebody, you pull out a knife. It was never our way here. That's not how we do things here, but that is how it is now, because our leaders have decided, well, that's a price worth paying, so we can look virtuous on the world stage. That's what they've decided. They've decided that on your behalf. They never asked us, of course. No, they wouldn't ask us because they know what we would tell them. So if you know you're going to get the wrong answer to a question, just don't ask the question. People don't want this. This incident yesterday, it happened in a suburb, in an apartment block that could be where you live. It could be your apartment block where you're raising your children. It could be your housing estate, again, where you're raising your young children. Young children there, you're out for a walk, out for a jog. And the government are placing people from some of the most dangerous, dysfunctional parts of the entire planet in beside you, and they don't tell you. They don't tell you. They don't. Why would they tell you? You're just a person. You're just an ordinary citizen. No, they're doing this because they want to tick boxes. And if a few eggs get broken or a few people get murdered, so be it. That's the price they're willing to pay with your safety. You see the case of Axel Rudikabana in Britain, there where he murdered in Southport these 3 angelic young children. He was on the radar, that guy. He was born in the UK, But he's from a Rwandan household. His parents were from Rwanda. He grew up imbibing the whole Rwandan way of life and the Rwandan worldview. He had brought a knife to school. It turned out later. They knew he'd been pulled up for this. He'd brought a knife to school over 10 times. Was caught. 10 times brought a knife to school in a school bag. You can't fix these cultures. You can't fix them. And that's the type of people they're bringing in here. And that's the type of people they're infusing into your once safe communities. And they're not telling you. They're not telling you. They don't compile violent crime statistics by ethnicity or by country of origin. They don't do it. You know why they don't do it? Because they're afraid you and I would see these statistics and we'd be horrified, and rightly so. But I'll tell you who does compile these statistics. The Danes, Denmark. Yeah, the Danes have a pretty good grip on this situation. They're neighbours of Sweden, the Danes, very close neighbours. And they've seen what Sweden got up to and how that worked out for them. And the Danes are saying, listen, whatever you're having, we don't want that. We do not. We're not going the places you went. And the Danes are right. So they have a very good grip on this, and they're doing a good job. And they did opt out. They had an opt-out of the EU Migration Pact, just like we did. And they opted out. They just said, look, we're grand. We're okay. We'll figure this out on our own. What did we do? The nodding pet poodles of Europe, of the EU, Ireland. We opted in. We had to opt in. We could have just said nothing and we'd be still out. We wouldn't be counted in it. But no, we physically opted in. Well, check out these statistics. And this is from the Danish government, because they actually compile these figures. Look at all the countries at the top. Now, any sane, normal government of a people would say, listen, our paramount duty is a duty of care to our people, the people who elect us, the people who pay us. So based on these statistics, it would be just safer for our society if we don't let these people in. Or if they do come in, they are absolutely vetted to a rigorous degree, the most rigorous degree possible. And our government decided, nah, you're not going to do any of that, because that would be unkind, it would be impolite. Well, I say bugger that unkind, impolite, virtue signalling crap. What you end up with is that stabbing yesterday. That's where that goes, where you have so-called teenagers arriving in, presenting unaccompanied at the immigration office and throwing themselves on the kindness of the Irish state, saying they're 16 or 15 or 17 and they could be 30. And then they end up in a classroom with your daughters or sons who are really 15. And then they end up in a class with some Afghan guy who's 30. And the authorities don't care. They don't care. And then suddenly something goes wrong in the playground, and a certain person from a certain part of the world pulls out a knife, a machete, a shank, and goes at your son. That's where we're at. That's where we're at now. I could make a whole channel now just out of stabbings in Ireland, because there's that many of them going on again and again and again. Every day almost. I could just have a channel about, call it Stab Ireland, or Ireland Stabbing in Ireland. Okay, YouTube mightn't let me do that, but still, you know what I mean. You could make a whole channel out of this. The madness has to stop. It has to stop, and the tragedy is it's not going to. That is the tragedy. It's not going to, because there's no political will. There's no political will to stop it. They're going to let it keep going. They're going to let it keep going. And you and I, we're the ones who are going to pay the price. Like Aisling Murphy. Aisling Murphy should still be here. Aisling Murphy should be married now. She should be probably expecting her first child if she hasn't had her first. That's what she should be. And that's what she would be if people like you and I were running things. But people like you and I aren't running things. Unfortunately, the worst possible candidates to run things are running things. And they're allowing this to happen. It doesn't have to be this way, guys. It doesn't have to be this way. And I fear if they don't change course, there could be dark days ahead. Really dark days.